Welcome to the ManageIQ Sprint 158 review. This was a standard 2-week sprint. I will provide the overview. Adam will update us on the providers and Jovi on the platform. This sprint, we had a surge in both pull requests merged as well as opened. I believe that a lot of these were developer-related things, but could be interesting to kind of dig into that. I think going forward, after the sprint reviews, some members of the ManageIQ team are moving on to other projects, so I expect it to drop off. And then as we get new contributors onto ManageIQ, I expect it to surge back up. In terms of the breakdown, 50 bugs were fixed, 45 enhancements, 28 in the test area, with the rest sprinkled around. And with that, I will turn it over to Adam.
Thanks, Oleg. So for providers in the core area this sprint, we added support for combined manager refresh to core. What this does is instead of having a separate full refresh for the cloud manager and all of the child managers, it'll do all of the managers in one refresh. This is similar to what's done with targeted refresh, and it's been used for a while in a couple of providers, IBM Cloud and Oracle Cloud, for instance. So what we've done is pulled the overrides out of those providers and add that support to core, so we got to delete a good amount of duplicate code there. For IBM Cloud, they enhanced the VPC refresh to include a number of additional attributes. So they added the availability zone information to cloud subnets, added an EMS ref to the authentications table and also to key pairs so that we don't need to use the name as the unique reference for an SSH key, which isn't great. So that was a really nice enhancement by Jared. We also added collection of cloud volume types so that we can figure out what type of cloud volume in order to provision. Jared also added support for initializing a VPC connection with an existing bearer token. So if you had authenticated previously, got a good bearer token back and it hasn't expired yet, you could actually save a good amount of time by reusing that existing bearer token instead of having to do another IAM request, which can take, I think, a second or two every time. Let's see. We also fixed endpoint parsing. There are a couple new Power VS regions that didn't match our filtering rules to pull out the region name from the endpoint. And so we added a couple of overrides to the settings for that. We also only collect Power VS SAP profiles if the instance has the SAP capability. So we're adding that check-in before collecting those. Next slide. So for Kubernetes, we found an interesting issue where if the metrics connection was invalid, it was dumping a huge error message to the log for every single container that it was trying to connect metrics for. So it blew the log up to gigs because it was like a 30K exception stack trace times a couple thousand containers. So what we're doing now is instead of allowing the metrics connection to the collection to try to proceed, we're checking the authentication status of the metrics endpoint before, and instead just printing a simple error message, hey, recheck authentication in order to collect metrics. So that fixed that up nicely. A lot of movement on the Oracle Cloud provider. We added event catcher support. Oracle Cloud actually has a really nice hosted Kafka broker that we're connecting to get events for. So we automatically create the event rules. So we'll send all events over to the Kafka topic. We pre-create the Kafka topic for ManageIQ and connect to it. So all you need to do is turn the event role on and we'll pre-create everything you need on the Oracle Cloud side. Based on that, we also added targeted refresh support. So for instances and images, when we get an event based on that, we'll do a targeted refresh of those. We also added support for metrics collection and VM power operations, all the standard power ops and VM destroy that you'd expect. Next slide. So this is the CapNU example for an instance in Oracle Cloud. And next slide, we'll have a short demo of targeted refresh. So you can see we've got our Oracle Cloud provider here, a bunch of inventory, one instance. So if we go to that instance, we can see that it is powered on. So now if we go over to our Oracle Cloud here, we can force stop it just to save time. So we actually only do the targeted refresh on the end. For every operation, they raise a begin and an end. So if you're interested, you can see how long the operation takes. But for the purposes of targeted refresh, we only care about when it's finished so that we can pull the latest inventory for it. So you can see it's stopped there. So we're going to go over to our cloud provider here and take a little bit. This isn't quite as fast as streaming refresh, where it's actually pulling it straight from the provider. It has to go through the event catcher, the event handler, automate, and then refresh. So this takes a little bit longer. And I think I anxiously refreshed this once or twice here, but you can see over here we have the events that are raised. So you can see we have a compute instance end and the refresh just finished. So if there we go, and it's off. And that is it for providers. Over to Joe.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Adam. Looks good. So this sprint in the platform space, there were 49 PRs merged. Starting with enhancements, Greg T contributed another PR to address some of the Red Hat certificate failures by adding labels to the images. And Adam contributed, pardon me, multiple pull requests to now install static systemd files as part of the RPM build instead of doing it every time the MIQ server every time the MIQ server boots. I wrapped up the work needed to configure the Kafka from the appliance console. Thanks to Brandon for a lot of help with that. Nick L made progress on the effort to move database backups in ManageIQ to be only something used by the appliance console. And not really enhancement, but worth mentioning because it was a lot of work. Joe R posted a number of PRs to test with newer versions of Ruby, which I think closed out his Ruby 2.7 work that he had been working on. And for documentation, there were a few PRs for improvements made by Adam, Joe R, and Nick L. And next page, please. And there was quite a bit of improvement done in the build space. I'm not going to go over all of these. Brandon is working away on fixing up our build environment. And that's it for the platform space. Back to you, Oleg.
Thanks. So next sprint is in 2 weeks, which is April 14th. But there's a new video conference. Since some of us are moving from Red Hat over to IBM, we decided to actually use the ManageIQ Google Meet number that we have there, that link. So we're going to try that for the very first time. I'm also going to post it somewhere on ManageIQ.org so that people can find us there. And we'll do a test run before to make sure it all works and everything like that. And with that, I want to say thank you to the speakers and the contributors. And a special shout out to all the people who are moving on from ManageIQ onto other projects. Thank you so much for all your contributions over the long haul here. And we'll miss you, but we wish you well. And that's it. So with that, thank you very much and take care.